So what about the life of Jesus? Well, the story starts when an angel appears to Zechariah. Notice not Mary. So the story actually doesn't start with Mary. It starts with a person named Zechariah, who was a priest in Jerusalem. And he was married to Elizabeth. So who is Elizabeth? Elizabeth is sisters with Mary. And the angel says to Zechariah that your wife is going to have a very special baby. And that special baby is not Jesus, obviously, but going to be John. And John later on becomes John the Baptist, and John the Baptist and Jesus have a very close life together, as you see later. Anyways, so the angel then appears to Mary. And the angel tells Mary that she will give birth to a very special baby named Jesus this time. And Jesus is going to be of the Holy Spirit and also of God. And Mary is to be born a virgin. Well, Mary was very touched by this, and so she's going to give birth to a very special baby. And then the angel appears to Joseph, Mary's husband. Now, obviously, Joseph initially is very upset about this whole thing. But the angel explains to Joseph the significance of the birth of Jesus, and he later then becomes accepting of that. So it's interesting now. So Elizabeth is pregnant and Mary's pregnant, and they're sisters, and they live in Nazareth. And one time they went, were together in the same room, and the two babies, the infants or the unborn infants, were inside the womb, kicking both at the same time, and to the point to where they couldn't take the mothers couldn't take it. They couldn't really be in the same room together. So it's just interesting that those two unborn babies knew each other. Well, who is Mary and where is she from? Mary's from Nazareth, which is in Israel. And Mary and Joseph, her husband, were part of a very special lineage. And that lineage was through Judah. And Judah is interesting because that can be traced all the way back to Abraham. And then Abraham is traced all the way back to Adam and Eve. And Judah is also probably the most important territorial region, which is part of Jerusalem. But at the time now, Mary lives in Nazareth, which is north of Jerusalem. And also, Israel was controlled or governed by Rome, and Caesar Augustus had asked for a census to be created. And that census was to take place in Bethlehem. Interesting, Bethlehem is also part of Judah. And it was prophesied in the Bible that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. So then there's the manger scene, because they're in Bethlehem and there's no place to sleep. And of course Mary is pregnant. So she's going to sleep in a manger. And at the manger, there were shepherds that were told by angels to go to Bethlehem. And there would have been goats and hay. And the manger scene is, for the most part, considered to be very accurate in terms of the setting for where Jesus would be born. So, so that's a very special scene. And then Jesus, Mary, and Joseph stay in Bethlehem. And they stay in Bethlehem at the age of 8. Jesus was circumcised, and he went back to Jerusalem, the temple. And then at day 40, when Jesus was just 40 days old, they visited Jerusalem again. And in Jerusalem, at the temple, was a very righteous priest that saw Jesus and recognized Jesus with his wife. What was that priest's name? Simeon and his wife Anna. And they recognized Jesus as being a very special baby, somebody that was going to change the world. And they also realized that that baby was from God. So it's just sort of interesting that they would recognize the significance of Jesus' life at that early age, and when nobody else really did seem to understand. So then something interesting happens. An angel appears to Joseph and Mary, and says that you need to flee Bethlehem because Herod had heard from some wise men that were coming from Arabia, interestingly. But Herod, the king at the time, heard about a king of the Jews coming from them, which again was part of the prophecy in the Old Testament that these sort of things would happen. So Herod was concerned and was going to have all the babies killed in Bethlehem. So they went to Egypt, which would have been south, and Jesus stayed in Egypt for 2 years. Then after that, they were told that everything was okay, and they returned to Nazareth, their home. And Jesus grew up in Nazareth. His father was a carpenter. And we were told that Jesus grew in wisdom and in favor with God and man. So he was being raised there in Nazareth. And something very special happens at the age of 12. At the age of 12, Jesus goes from Nazareth to Jerusalem. Now, Nazareth was north of Jerusalem and probably would have taken several days of travel to get to Jerusalem. So why were they going to Jerusalem? They were celebrating the Passover. And it's interesting the number of times that Jesus goes to, in the Bible, how much he goes to Jerusalem for the Passover. But anyways, on the way back, again, it's a very long trip, so they have this caravan. And they're traveling across the country of Israel, and all of a sudden they realize that Jesus is missing. He's not there. Where's Jesus? Everybody's asking. So they actually have to go back to Jerusalem, which again might have taken a half a day or a full day. So they get there, and what do they find when they get to Jerusalem? They find Jesus teaching. He's 12 years old, and he's at the temple area. And he's teaching the various priests and ranking officials, and they're amazed. They can't believe how much he knows about the Bible, the first 5 books of the Bible. And he was also teaching them. So then that basically covers the birth of Jesus, and then on into his adolescent time period as well.